going, you'll miss it. Which is actually a good thing. That's the reason that you don't see tons of over here. But people would come in here and start digging the artifacts and basically destroy this place. Because the bottles, depending on, you know, what they are, they could bring, you know, a lot of money, but they're intact. If you go onto YouTube, I mean, there's been a lot of people out here exploring. You know, sometimes they do like a YouTube video, but everything they see, you know, you'll see today too. You know, give you some ideas. But usually, if I find stuff, I'll put it on top of the pedestals, like over there. You know, a piece of metal. Yeah, stuff like that. I mean, a lot of pipes and things. Don't know what it went to. But most everything is gone because of the Great Depression. You know, people were very poor here. The Depression hit the South harder than the North. People didn't have anything, so they come in here and finished off any materials that would be viable. They would have put them with them. The same way with two plates over there, the turpentine mill. There's hardly anything over there at this point. So. But you can kind of see the pedestals, and they keep going across. So if you start looking from pedestal to pedestal, you see how big this place actually was. And of course, all these trees are growing in since then. There was no trees here, as you saw from the aerial picture. There was no trees. So all this is going back in over time. But it kind of shows you that just because a tree is, you know, maybe 3 inches in diameter and some others are 20 inches in diameter, doesn't mean that that tree is older than this tree. It means that some of these trees are understory, and they just can't get enough light or nutrients to grow. So if you look at the rings on a small sapling like this, they're very tight. So you're always going to have some overstory trees that grow faster. But here's some of the pedestals, and we're kind of heading north to south, you know, through this way. We're going to head up through this way now. We'll get to the pond where they used to drop the lumber in, the logs. So let's take this way. I can find a good path.
Frankenstein there. I saw like a lot of bricks over there and stuff. It was like columns. It was like a building underground. Over there.
We're going into the float pond area now.
the logs, the cypress logs at the north end, and float them this way, and they would keep them in here because cypress has to stay wet until you're ready to mill it. If not, it dries out and cracks. So some of the cypress logs sunk, and that's what these are. These are your last artifacts of that old growth cypress. One here, there's a few of them around. You kind of get an idea from this one here. And these were small. These weren't very big at all. So when they shrunk, they kind of like, just leave them. And that's what happened. That's why you still see them. There's several more. There's a few that are bigger. But what you see are the cypress that has come back in that was planted. That's bulb cypress that was put in probably back in the 90s, after Gill sold the property. But this whole area, you really can't see it. There's a big pond. So you got to kind of picture in your mind this pond is really full of logs. Just full of logs floating there. And
Where did the water come from?
the water came naturally. There actually was a canal that would join this with other areas to bring water in here. And in most of the time, we can't come down here anyways. It's too wet. Especially this time of year, we would normally start getting our rain. Normally, you can't come down in here. So this is kind of nice. This is actually the driest I've seen this in a long time. But they would float the logs, and then when they were ready to harvest them, they would drag them over here. They would skid them up this concrete ladder. They had a steam engine at the top, and they'd hook a cable onto them, and they would drag these things up here, sideways, straight up.
To load onto
a platform to get them set to be logged, to be milled. Because you're talking pieces of various length. It just depended on what they want to cut. 8.5, 16.5, depends on what they were going to be used for. If they were a huge log, very heavy, then they would be 8.5 feet long.
So was the cutting mechanism like right here?
No. There was a double bandsaw mill, which is straight on to the south a little bit further. They'd have to bring these up here. They'd have to debark them and do a few other things until they were ready to be milled. But it was a process. The most dangerous job in this whole mill plant would have been being in this pond, because you had people riding these logs and pushing these logs with big poles. You've probably seen that elsewhere. Pushing these logs to this area. If that person fell off that log and went down, a lot of times, what would happen is the logs would go over top of them and they couldn't come back up again, or they would get crushed. So, Frank, come here. So the bottom line is, you didn't want to be the young guy out here on the pond, because it was all young people. And when I say young, probably 12, 13, 14 years old. Yeah. Or powerful. We'll see that in a little bit. So, use your imagination, but none of these trees were here. This embankment that you see, this was all done with a drag line, steam shovel drag line, where they'd actually send a bucket out there on the drag line and start scooping it up, and that's how they made all these embankments. So none of these trees were here. So it kind of gives you an idea. Everybody says, well, gee, that oak tree there is probably, 200 or 300 years old. No, it's not even 100 years old. Shows you how fast trees can actually grow. Faster than you would ever realize. So. Frank, are you coming back?
The pond's right here.
I don't have my glasses on, so hang on a second. No, the pond's not in the picture.
Yeah, okay.
The pond's like over in here somewhere. Yeah. We don't have any pictures of the pond yet with logs in it, because they didn't use it for all the logs. They didn't need it for cedar. They didn't need it for pine logs, because you don't have to keep them in water. They only used it for the cypress. The cypress came first. Cypress, they wiped it out completely. They didn't use this anymore. So that's why you don't see any other type of logs in here. All right. Any questions? Nothing?
Is there a book
the history of Centralia?
No.
Photos?
No, we
Are
only.
you gonna write one?
Well, I always hope that Sid Taylor would, because most everything I know is from her. So she has a little bit more time than I do. I've often hoped that she would write a book, or at least put something together, because we don't have much. We can only look at pictures, and usually the pictures create more questions than we have answers to. We don't have anybody that was here firsthand. These people are long gone. The last person that we know that worked here, he died, I think, in the late 60s, mid to late 60s. A rough occupation. People didn't live long in this occupation. It was very hazardous to your health. One way or another, you were probably going to be either maimed or killed. So, but very difficult. A lot of fumes. Steam engines. They did have electrical plant here, so they had electricity. We know that from pictures. We have a picture of the power plant. We don't know if it was DC or AC. Just questions that we can't answer. So, you know. But let's go ahead and we'll just take our time and go back up again, and we'll go to the east, and we'll find the water tower base, and we'll kind of look at that and go from there. But you just got to kind of use your imagination. A lot of people come out here and they want to see buildings, but there's no buildings. But I think that the neatest thing here actually is not what's left of the building. It's the cypress logs. Because you won't see them anywhere else. Cypress is gone. That old growth cypress is gone. You know, that red tide cedar or cypress is gone. There's none. I think the last one would have been what, the Senator, which caught on fire. That was the last one.
There's one out in Gotha, isn't there?
How old would it be?
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I only heard about it.
Yeah, because I'm hoping
It's
there's
like
a
the
few
next
around the
oldest
state
one or
that maybe we
something?
don't know about, but unfortunately the St. Joe Company owns a lot of the land where these old growths are. So when you buy cypress mulch is made, they'll take whole cypress trees and they grind them into mulch. The whole tree, everything, just for cypress mulch. It ruins ecosystems, you know. It's not a good choice to make to buy, because it's all about supply and demand. If people stop buying cypress mulch, then they will stop harvesting the trees.
There's one called Melaleuca.
Melaleuca, that's right. Paper tree. Yep. Yeah, John's right. It's Melaleuca. Some people call it the paper tree. Mainly south towards like Lake Wales, on further south is where it grows. It's invasive. It takes over whole areas. They grind that up for mulch, and it's just as good as cypress. And plus, you're doing, you know, the environment a good turn by using it. All right. Let's find the easiest path of least resistance to go up here. Probably maybe alongside the concrete. We can hold on to the concrete ledge. Frank, you ready?
Yeah. Yeah, like that, rolled them. You can see right underneath those palm trees, there's bolts that this machinery would have been attached to those two pylons. And then, you know, it would have been a cable thing, you know, a winch basically. Well, they brought them up here to cut them. Have you seen where they have the saw yet? There's this enormous two pylons where the saw would have been. And it's just incredible. You see the bolts there. And they still have the nuts on them, so they must have ripped the machinery off to get it out of here.
So this is 2017. So chances are this was a sapling that came in after the mill closed. So it gives you an idea of how fast.
Is actually the one where I know. I've seen that one.
And if you ever get a chance to go to Cracker Country area of the Florida State Fair, you see a lot of that machinery, some of it even in action.
Oh, double, or what do you call that stuff, that operated on bands?
Yeah, bandsaw, like I don't know the name of it, but it's like a...
There's a flywheeler. Is it called flywheelers?
Yeah.
There's a guy in Brooksville. You got to see this place, John. He has a flywheel collection of old machinery.
Oh, cool.
And he grinds his own. We'll have to.
Cool.
We'll show you.
So you can kind of see to the south behind you, this is the main part of the mill. The logs were coming in behind you, and they were being processed to the left and to the right. So they were processed east to west. Some would go to the left, some would go to the right, depending on what they were and what size they were. So you kind of see that these piles of dirt, this was all dug out here, and all this dirt was put off to the side. So everything was going that way. And the double bandsaw itself would have been where that big pedestal is out there, that huge one, because they had to have it off the ground because the bottom had a big spindle. For the bottom of the spindle, it had to lift off the ground. And they had to have access to work on it and grease the bearings and things like that and do maintenance to it. But it keeps on going for a long ways, just like that picture that we looked at.
You ever go over to Cracker Country or any of those kind of places in Florida State Fair where they have the machinery?
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, Mr. Milton has a lot of machinery too.
The guy in Brooksville?
Yeah.
John was just telling me about him. Yeah.
He has a lot of neat stuff that you look at and what the heck does that do, you know? And
when you see these things, you understand, the connection, how it works,
Well, there's a lot of things that, like you have an indentation here.
Yeah, for some sort of wood.
Probably. So actually, I don't see any studs coming out, so, I don't know what would have gone here, maybe a piece of wood possibly to